Imagine living in America with the comfort of knowing you'll likely never be deported. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, for citizens of some Asian countries, this isn't just a dream, it's reality. There are specific nations whose citizens, even if they overstay visas or face certain legal issues, are almost never deported from the United States. But why? What makes these countries so special in the eyes of the U.S. immigration system? Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating reasons, from diplomatic relationships to humanitarian protections, and uncovering exactly which Asian countries are on this rare list. Stay tuned, because reason number 5 will surprise you the most. Number 1. Understanding deportation and U.S. immigration policy. Before we name the countries, let's first understand how deportation works in America. Deportation, or removal, is the formal process where the U.S. government orders a non-citizen to leave the country. This can happen for various reasons: overstaying a visa, committing certain crimes, or violating immigration laws. However, not all countries are equal when it comes to how quickly, or even if, the U.S. can deport someone. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or IC, can issue an order for removal, but carrying out that order depends on cooperation from the person's home country. And here's the catch. If that country refuses to accept deportees or has no repatriation agreement with the U.S., sending people back becomes almost impossible. So in short, whether or not someone is deported isn't just about U.S. law. It's also about international diplomacy. Number 2. Why some countries don't get deportees back. Now, why would a country refuse to take back its own citizens? There are several reasons. 1. Diplomatic tensions. If relations between the U.S. and another nation are strained, that country might simply refuse cooperation on deportations as a political move. 2. No repatriation agreement. Some countries have never signed a formal agreement allowing deportations from the U.S. back to their soil. 3. Human rights concerns. If returning someone would mean subjecting them to persecution, torture, or unsafe conditions, U.S. courts can block deportation under international treaties. 4. Logistical barriers. In some cases, the country doesn't have the resources, documentation systems, or willingness to process deportees quickly. Because of these reasons, certain Asian countries find themselves in a unique position where their citizens in America, even without legal status, are very rarely sent back. Country number 1, China. First on the list is China. The U.S. and China have a complex and sometimes tense relationship, especially on issues like trade, technology, and human rights. Deportation is one of those areas where things get tricky. China has been known to delay or outright refuse the issuance of travel documents for deportees, making it nearly impossible for IC to complete the process. In many cases, deportation orders against Chinese nationals remain unexecuted for years. This doesn't mean Chinese citizens have immunity from U.S. laws, but in practice, physical deportation is rare. As a result, many Chinese nationals facing removal can remain in the U.S. under an order of supervision, meaning they must check in with IC, but are not actually removed. Country number 2, Vietnam. Next, we have Vietnam. In 2008, the U.S. and Vietnam signed an agreement stating that Vietnamese nationals who arrived in the United States before July 12, 1995, the date diplomatic relations were normalized, would not be subject to deportation. This was a huge deal for the Vietnamese American community, especially refugees who fled after the Vietnam War. Even today, deportations to Vietnam are extremely limited. While newer arrivals might still face removal, the process is often slow and complicated, meaning many Vietnamese nationals remain in the U.S. indefinitely even with final removal orders. Country number 3, Laos. Laos is another country where deportations from the U.S. are rare. There's no formal repatriation treaty between the two nations, and Laos has been known to reject or delay accepting deportees. This is especially true for members of the Hmong community, many of whom came to the U.S. as refugees after assisting American forces during the Vietnam War era. Given the historical ties and humanitarian considerations, U.S. immigration enforcement often faces political and moral pressure to avoid sending people back to Laos. Country number 4, Cambodia. Cambodia has a complicated history with U.S. deportations. While there is technically an agreement in place, Cambodia has periodically refused to accept deportees, especially those who have been in the U.S. since childhood. In 2017, the U.S. even imposed visa sanctions on Cambodian officials for their lack of cooperation. However, deportations remain limited, and for many Cambodian nationals in the U.S., actual removal is still rare. Many advocacy groups continue to fight for an end to all deportations to Cambodia, citing humanitarian concerns and family separation issues. Country number 5, Bhutan. Bhutan might not be the first country you think of, but it's on this list because deportations there are virtually non-existent. Bhutan is a small, isolated kingdom in the Himalayas, and it has no formal repatriation agreement with the U.S. Additionally, Bhutan has strict internal controls on who can enter its territory, even its own nationals in some cases. This means that for Bhutanese citizens in America without legal status, deportation is more of a theoretical possibility than a practical reality. Number 3. Humanitarian protections and temporary protected status, TPS. Another reason some countries' citizens rarely face deportation is humanitarian protection. If a country is experiencing armed conflict, natural disasters, or severe political instability, the U.S. can grant temporary protected status, known as TPS, to its nationals already living in America. For example, during crises like the Rohingya persecution in Myanmar or political instability in certain regions, deportations can be halted entirely. Even if TPS is temporary, it often gets renewed for years, effectively shielding people from removal. Number 4. What happens to people who can't be deported? You might be wondering, if someone has a deportation order but their country won't take them back, what happens? Well, they often remain in the U.S. under what's called an order of supervision. This means they must regularly report to immigration officials, keep their address updated, and follow certain rules. They can't necessarily travel abroad, and they may face restrictions on work authorization, but they also can't be forced to leave. In some cases, after a certain period, they can even apply for legal relief or adjustment of status under special circumstances. Number 5. Why this doesn't mean free immigration. Now, it's important to clear up a misconception. Just because some country citizens are rarely deported doesn't mean the U.S. has an open-door policy for them. People from these nations can still be detained, denied visas, or face legal consequences for immigration violations. The difference is the final step, physically sending them back, is where the process breaks down. This also means their lives in the U.S. may still be full of uncertainty, as policies can change with shifts in political leadership or diplomatic relations. Number 6. Future possibilities and policy changes. Immigration policy is constantly evolving. In the past, the U.S. has used visa sanctions as leverage against countries refusing deportees. There's always the possibility that agreements could be signed or diplomatic relations could improve, making deportations easier. But as of now, these countries remain among the hardest to deport people to from America. For those living in the U.S. from these nations, the key takeaway is this. While deportation might be unlikely today, it's never completely off the table. So, there you have it, the Asian countries whose citizens are almost never deported from America, and the reasons why. From diplomatic standoffs to humanitarian protections, the world of immigration is far more complex than it appears on the surface. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more in-depth immigration and world affairs content, and share this with someone who might find it useful. And remember, immigration law changes constantly, so always stay informed.